Hey friends, it's generally probably not a good idea to make videos when I'm sleepy, but this seems to be like a window of opportunity that I have to make these videos, and I would rather make slightly incoherent videos than not make anything at all. So this is what you get. I was talking to my wife a few hours ago about me feeling like I was starting to make progress in thinking about my essays, which has been a thing I've been talking about all year, right? And I was reminded of my friend Haida has this nice description of what it's like to make progress without seeing progress. And it's when you have a pipe for water to flow through, like a hose, right? And you have multiple knots in it. So let's say you have 10 knots or 5 knots, whatever, 5 knots. If you untangle one knot, you're not gonna change the fact that it still doesn't spray water. Like it had 5 knots, now 4 knots, then you untie another one, 3, and both times you untie a knot, it still looks like nothing's working, right? So that's a complication because you got to do it 5 times total to get all the knots out, and then you see the water, right? And the thing is, it feels like you're not making progress while you are. And if you can see a hose and you can see the knots in the hose, then that's quite apparent. But the challenging thing with a lot of complicated operations and stuff that involves moving parts beyond yourself is that it can be difficult to tell whether or not the work you're doing is actually making any kind of progress. And I suspect that a lot of interesting work that doesn't happen because there are something like 5 knots, right? And you can let's switch metaphors to you need to have 5 things in place, and having the first one and the second one and the third one in place doesn't make it work, right? So you're gonna have to endure a lot of failure for a long period of time, and a lot of experimentation is gonna make it look like it's not gonna work still. My grammar is all over the place. So I feel like I've been doing that with my essays. Like I think I've been making progress in thinking about my essays and drafting and sketching and all of those things, and I haven't yet had much to show for it in the form of the essays themselves. But earlier today, so this is after I spoke to my wife, but while I was just doing some work, I was writing a tweet. I started writing a tweet, and what happened was the thought that I had very quickly went past the container of the tweet. And normally when I'm writing threads, which used to be my default approach, right? Like normally I open up Twitter to start thinking, and I just think out loud in my tweets. And that's how I tweet. Like I don't plan my threads ahead of time. If I was gonna plan a thread ahead of time, I would just write an essay. But yeah, so normally I just start writing a thought, and if it doesn't fit in the container of a tweet, I start breaking it into subsequent tweets. I do as little effort as possible to manage that. And this time I just didn't want to do it, so I just wanted to. I kept typing, and what happened was I got 2 paragraphs of text, and I posted it as a screenshot. And the interesting thing about the 2 paragraphs of text is that it clearly feels very different than a Twitter thread. It feels somewhat different than a series of texts, which I sometimes I'm chatting with friends and I say several things that I feel I want to screenshot and repost, and it feels different than a more polished, comprehensive essay, and it feels different than a chapter of a book. And all of these are different things, and all of these are things that I want to get good at, and they do require a certain switching, and now I'm reminded that when I was 20 or 21, I ran a half marathon without much training, hoping that it would make me even if I didn't get fitter from running one half marathon, I was hoping that psychologically it would make running shorter distances less unpleasant. It didn't help. In fact, it might have even put me off running more. And I feel like something similar has played out where, a part of me hoped that writing a book would help me get better at writing essays. It doesn't, not really. Not in the way that I'm sensitive to. So I think, in a general sense, I could probably just write any amount of text in any length, and I think non-writers and non-serious readers, so just casual scrollers and casual readers would say, oh, that's not bad. But I'm not trying to do not bad. I'm trying to do good. And good and not bad, I think is there's an important distinction for me. I'm trying to write stuff that really resonates and really pushes its context to its limit, or something of that effect. I'm trying to do, and when you want to do what is the best possible in some genre, some medium, some context, it's just hard, and I like the difficulty, but it also, I don't know, I guess all this is just me making a record for my future self to revisit, because I don't need to explain this to anyone, but I know that if I don't say it out loud or write it down or something, eventually I'll have gone past it. And this is like Sister Sarah's write it now thing. When you don't understand a thing, you're trying to figure it out and you can't really make sense of it, and then you get to a peak where, oh shit, everything's starting to make sense. And then if you don't write stuff at the peak where it starts to make sense, then a while later it starts to feel so obvious that you forget what you did. You forget the earlier stages, right? And I felt this even, when I came up with my book title, Friendly Ambitious Nerd, I went through some kind of process to get there. And now the book title is so self-evidently correct and true and final that I can't remember what it was like before I had that phrase. But I do have some notes from then, and I've tweeted about it, and I have some blog posts and stuff, so not too bad. But yeah, I'm trying to keep a record so that I can keep my story straight. Not just story, but I don't want to lose this information. I feel like it's important. And important to me, I guess. I want to have records of my progress, and I want to prove that, I want to prove that I wasn't just lucky. Luck is a part of it. You have to allow luck to work through you, but I want to capture how just messy the process is and how much confusion and chaos goes into it. And I don't think I actually said anything about the essays themselves. I guess the thing I realized was that I've been trying to think 3 steps ahead, and that's unwise. I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting to try and imagine 3 steps ahead, but I should really be thinking 1.5-ish steps ahead and move forward. So one of the things that, one way I framed it is if you're familiar with Bill Word's History of Japan. If you're not familiar with it, stop this video and look up Bill Word's History of Japan on YouTube. He made History of Japan, and then he made History of the Entire World, I guess. And the first video is shorter and about Japan. The second video is bigger, longer, and about everything. And what I have been trying to do is I have been trying to figure out how to do my History of the Entire World work without yet having conceptualized and published the History of Japan. So let's just say earlier work and later work, right? I'm thinking about the later work without establishing the earlier work. And that's just, mixing up form and medium and function and very, it's too incoherent, it's too unsettled. I'm so afraid of falling into a certain trap that I guess I've fallen. So it's premature optimization. TLDR, I have been prematurely optimizing. I should have been trying to solve for smaller things. But I don't regret it. I don't regret having kind of dreamed big and trying to think 5 dominoes out. And now I'm going to focus on the next couple of dominoes. And I do think that having thought that through is going to shape my form. So one of the things I was thinking about is that I realized that, one of my, like, I was like maybe 17 or 18 when I first started thinking I should write a memoir of my life when I'm that young. And I won't get into specifics of why here, but like, I have a bunch of notes here and there throughout my life, and I just feel like for me to do the work that I want to do, it will help to have people who know me. And one way of getting people to know me is to tell my stories in my essays, right? But I don't think I'm like famous enough or important enough that people want to know my entire life story and will sit through it and read it. But I can include it in snippets in my essays such that as people are reading it because they want to get to the frameworks and the concepts and whatever's useful and interesting and insightful, they also get to know me along the way. And similarly, like, I have a bunch of like sermonizing that I always do, like preaching at people. And again, if it's just preaching, I don't think anyone wants to read that. And I have these like frameworks and mental models that I know are useful and powerful, but I don't just want to give that away like for free, and I don't necessarily want to sell it either, but what I found is that I'm going to tell a bit of stories about myself. I'm going to present ideas in a way that I think is interesting and useful, and there will be a bit of sermonizing about how I think, people should be kind, take care of each other, blah blah blah. I do really think that, I say blah 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 to mock, to not take myself too seriously about the sermons, but the sermon, I do believe what I say. What else? So yeah, it just, and it occurred to me that, I was also thinking like, there are genres that emerge and like people see it being popular and they try to mimic it. Like, there's a certain kind of confessional, emotional style of writing that people like, and it's good. But I don't just want to mimic what other people are doing and fit. Like, once I see some people doing something well, I want to play the counter melody. I don't want to be another one of that same thing. I want to kind of respond to it by doing a different thing. And I'm trying to figure out what that different thing is. And yeah, I'm trying to operate in the space between genres, which is I guess I need to reassure myself that it's okay for me to develop some kind of familiar pattern voice and then deviate from it subsequently, right? And on my Twitter, I can ask people to parody my tweets, and they try, and it's interesting and funny, and I can then just change the way I tweet. So I guess I've been afraid of being too formulaic when being somewhat formulaic at the start is almost necessary, right? And yeah, I have an essay about that as well, about like genreification and genreification and flanderization and a bunch of stuff like that. But topic for another time. Hope you guys are well. Done.